Finally, journalists cannot be held responsible for the statements of others, provided that they have themselves not endorsed them. This would apply, for example, in the case of a live interview broadcast. The most celebrated case of this type did not involve defamation. It concerned a Danish journalist, Jersild, who made a television documentary featuring a group of neo-Nazi youths. In the course of the film, the subjects made a series of extreme and grossly offensive racist remarks. After public complaints, both Jersild and the subjects of his documentary were prosecuted and convicted under racial hatred laws. In its consideration of the case, the European Court made an observation, often repeated subsequently, about the courts having no role in determining how journalists go about their work. It says, "The methods of objective and balanced reporting may vary considerably, depending, among other things, on the media in question. It is not for this court, nor for the national courts for that matter, to substitute their own views for those of the press as to what technique of reporting should be adopted by journalists." The views broadcast were not those of Jersild themselves, but were clearly presented as part of a serious public discussion on the problem of racism. The court therefore held that, taken as a whole, the feature could not objectively have appeared to have as its purpose the propagation of racist views and ideas. On the contrary, it clearly sought, by means of an interview, to expose, analyze and explain this particular group of youths, limited and frustrated by their social situation, with criminal records and violent attitudes, thus dealing with specific aspects of a matter that already then was of great public concern. This led the court to its seminal conclusion, which has often been repeated in other cases. The punishment of a journalist for assisting in the dissemination of statements made by another person in an interview would seriously hamper the contribution of the press to discussion of matters of public interest and should not be envisaged unless there are particularly strong reasons for doing so. In a more recent case, Greek broadcaster Nikitas Leonorakis was found liable for defamation and ordered to pay damages to an individual who was insulted by a studio guest interviewed in a live radio broadcast. The European Court found several grounds for determining that his Article 10 rights had been violated, giving particular emphasis to the interviewer's lack of liability for the live remarks of an interviewee. It also reiterated a point to be found in a number of its judgments on media cases. It said, "Requiring that journalists distance themselves systematically and formally from the content of a statement that might defame or harm a third party is not reconcilable with the press's role of providing information on current events, opinions and ideas." In other words, it should be taken as a given that a journalist is not automatically associated with the opinions stated by others, and it's unnecessary for this to be repeated in relation to each reported opinion or fact. There is ongoing debate about the extent to which individuals or companies involved in the publication of a defamatory statement may be held liable. It is uncontroversial that, in the context of a newspaper, the journalist who writes a piece is responsible, as is the editor who signed off on the content. The publisher of the newspaper is the corporate entity responsible for publication and, as a matter of law, they are liable as well. This has all been accepted by the European Court of Human Rights. A matter of debate is the extent to which, with regard to publication on the internet, companies involved in carrying messages or publishing content are liable. Under European Union law, which applies to the majority of Council of Europe member states, an internet service provider is not liable for defamatory content unless they are notified of it and fail to remove it expeditiously. This is under the so-called e-commerce directive. The Grand Chamber of the European Court decided in the case in 2015 that news websites are liable for any defamatory remarks left by their readers as comments below news articles. This was in the case of Delphi versus Estonia, and the court indicated that news websites should employ people to monitor these comments and remove them immediately when they are found to be clearly unlawful. This would appear to contradict the EU standard on liability and will probably be subject of further litigation.